Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our 18th August here on the green. It's hard to believe. Goes very quickly, right? We have a great lineup tonight, all-star lineup tonight. Our first reader comes to us. I don't usually tell too much about everybody's background. We just kind of run right into it. But during COVID, I guess probably the first week of lockdown, we started doing online poetry. And then we started reaching out around the world. And our online, I think we were doing two or three a week, I think, at the beginning, 2 a week. And we wound up with poets from Nepal to Edmonton, down from California down to Jamaica, and all around the country. That's morphed into a series that we run on the first and third Mondays in September through May when we're not doing the Gazebo. It's called Poetry Near and Afar. And we have two features. They each get 20 minutes. One is from the New York area and one is from afar. And it's been great. We get a nice crowd. For that, we do an open mic. And those of you who know me know how much I detest open mics, but we do an open mic for that program. That seems to work out really, really well. So if you're a poet, just look for that. Once the season ends, you can be a non-poet, just come and listen. It's really good stuff. We get poets from all over the country. So we are delighted that one of our friends from afar has made his way up from Maryland tonight to join us. And so without any further ado, Brenardo. Okay. This mic you can't get too close to, otherwise it's okay. Gotcha. All right. I think you're good. Okay.
See.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. Like Tony said, I picked y'all up online and I watched your faces and I wanted to do this work. And I just recently released a book. Back on the table, it's only $15. And in releasing this book, I put myself on my own self-guided book tour. I don't know how to do this thing, but God put this gift inside of my body, and this is what I'm here for. So let me get started. I am the sing-song poet. I stand heroic like a stanchion on a bridge. I am here tonight to share with you the passage bridges give. Like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down. We lay down sentences, convinced this is the reason we were chosen. It is the word we serve to which we are beholden. Quote them in your synagogues, your churches, mosques, your schools. Please share. Make them audible in concert halls, stadiums, auditoriums. Name them anthems, theme songs, prayers. These derivatives of that which made everything possible are what we bring to lay. To say the problems seen are solvable. We commend them, extend them as far as they are allowed. Let the sun shine in again, remove the shroud. Let these words be heard from heart to heart to heart, as we remember how life for all did start, how life remains for every son and daughter like a bridge over troubled waters. We now lay these down. I want to dedicate this next poem out to my veterans, to those who put their lives on the line, especially those soldiers who were places like Vietnam, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, on the front line, giving it their all. To see the light of tracer rounds, to shrink down to its power, where lightning flashes, thunder booms, where minutes feel like hours. Who will know this day by day the way that it may be? They call them pores, these scenes from war that lack quaint scenery. Through death and smoke, our nostrils choke in search of air unstained. How can dreams return as clean when these thoughts remain? Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. To live your life from duffel bag to barracks, trenches, tent, to go unknowing to your foes wherever you were sent, to spend a week, a day, a month, or more to make a friend, and in 1 hour's firefight to see the whole thing end, but carry them still in memory, in pockets of the mind, for oath cannot be broken. We leave no one behind. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Where night gives way to sullen days, where routine is imperative, to look at change as dangerous signs, decreasing your chances to live. When so alone meets far from home on holidays and such, when prayers are said and letters read in place of loved ones' touch. These are the times that come to mind when someone says aloud, we feel appreciation for how you serve this nation. You should be very proud. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And of course, there are other human beings in our lives who support us, follow us, and they make sacrifices on our behalf. And these next two poems go out to them. This first one, Time with Grandma. I climb inside my mind. I do not know what year it is. I am listening to Al Stewart's Time Passages with my grandma in her living room in Columbia Park Apartments in 1970 something. And something is stirring within me in this reoccurring visit I have sometimes. There's moisture in my eyes as if tears might appear at any moment. The atonement, so subtle, is not so much from trouble, but if only I knew how fleeting time was, how few the meetings would be with someone that I loved. She was the woman who fought my own mama for my possession. She believed Barbara was too reckless, too wild to raise a child. Even though, or maybe because my mother was her daughter, she fought the fight that ended with me taken from her arms, but not from her life. For months at a time, we would find ourselves living together over the years. So why this occasion? What is the meaning of here? Listening to this song, not Three Times a Lady, or One Nation Under a Groove, or ELO, or Men at Work, or any other music from earlier times that we both used to know together. His eye is on the sparrow in times bequeathed forlorn, or how you'll never walk alone, which begins with when you walk through a storm. Messages she planted, she handed me in song, echoing through the decades after she is gone. You know, she used to be a singer in the nightclubs in Georgia back in the day. She had dreams of being a professional, but her destiny was not Annie, but rather Bessie Mae. I did not understand her dreamy-eyed crooning back then when she would disappear into the memories of what she had left behind. Where was she in her mind? What is the meaning of me being in this time, at this time? But if only I knew how fleeting time really was, how few the meetings would be with someone that I loved. I touched this memory with tenderness as it deserves. And then on cue, the music and the words emerge. Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I'm not the kind to live in the past. The years run too short, the days too fast. The things you lean on are things that don't last. Well, it's just now and then my line gets cast into these time passages. Mm-hmm. I know you're in there. You're just out of sight. Whoa, time passages. Mm-hmm. Buy me a ticket on the last train home tonight. Returning to those people who make sacrifices on our behalf. Would they be like I was, a union member? Could they be an activist? Could they be a nurse? Whatever they may be, these people stand together to make sure we're safe. Unity is the reason. Raise your hand above your head. Raise your hand to take this pledge. Be considerate to what is said. Unity is the reason for the fist. Number one is for me. Number two is for the family. Number three is for the worker standing next to me. Number four is for the millions more who feel the same thing at the core. Number five is for the one that keeps us all alive, helps us to survive, and reminds us all that together we stand, divided we fall. For all of these, we make the call to bring them together just like this. Unity is the reason for the fist. It's not to punch or start a fight, just a symbol to unite. Single entities gather tight. Unity is the reason for the fist. Being united, the perfect use, not to lash out in abuse. Being frustrated is no excuse. Unity is the reason for the fist. So with all things being equal, it just means power to the people. History has given sequels, and a fist bump that is not lethal. Number one is for me. Number two is for the family. Number three is for the worker standing next to me. Number four is for the millions more who feel the same thing at the core. Number five is for the one that keeps us all alive, helps us to survive, and reminds us all that together we stand and divided we fall. For all of these, we make the call to bring them together just like this. Unity is the reason for the fist. And for that reason, in these times that we're living, we need to do our part. And our part is being shown by me with this t-shirt. This poem came to me, and it's in the book as well. 4 words forward. And this is how we move forward together. We move ourselves forward, we move this country forward. When we practice these words: work, hope, love, vote. Work, hope, love, vote. If we could eradicate apathy dramatically, we could take back democracy emphatically. We could play a part in starting to reduce the tragedies. To vote is more than hope, it is strategy. Love could decrease the numbers of people who are left behind or hurt. It is not done magically, but by us doing the work. 4 words of note to quote: work, hope, love, vote. Now that brings me to the end of my set, and this poem goes out to all the poets out there and to everyone here, because you're here for a reason. You're here because your spirit needs to be fed words. As for me, I believe in poetry. I believe in its magic. I believe in its ability to face something tragic, to place it in a place of frame that helps us get past it. No matter how long, with spirits so strong, believe, let it take you to where you belong. I believe in poetry. I believe in inspiration. I believe the words that come are of enjoying collaboration. A poet that knows this shows this in all of creation. With power so strong in our prayers and our songs, receive, let it take you to pastures of calm. I believe in poetry. I believe in its strength. I believe from haikus to sonnets, no matter the length. When word is served pure from heart, its power is evident. Through our prayers and our songs, like a praise or a bomb, conceive, let it take you from darkness to dawn. Poetry knowingly enters in places, the core of what grace is, so sweet its embrace is. So come forth and taste this. I believe in poetry. Do you? Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Brenardo! All right, what a way to start off the evening. Okay. That was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I knew it because he's been great online, just and even more powerful in person.
All right, next up, a great friend of the Gazebo, a great friend of all of poetry on Long Island, our great friend D.D. Spungin. I lowered it a little bit.
He has it. Okay. Okay, so can you hear me in the back? Barbara? Tony, thank you so much for having me back. Thank you, Kiwanis, for everything you do. And the people at that table in the back, thank you and bless you all. And thank you all for being here. If you need a reason, like a flower you pass as you're distracted by the day, the bold patch of yellow in your path, or just at the side of your foot, unnoticed, there is the subliminal, a vague sense of joy, the kind that comes upon you when you turn the calendar page. Note, spring is almost here. Think you can put snow shovels away, plan a day trip, lower the heat. Suddenly, an uplifted heart beats in your winter chest, and you wonder why you're whistling. Perhaps you look back and see the color poking through, nod your head, and feel the upturn of lips that had been considering escape. This life can weigh a body down. Flowers, for some the respite lightening the load, for others, perhaps a poem. Thank you. Smashing noise. Sound waves crush my ears. Sound waves goodbye. Promises to return as breaking waves. Purring kittens, whispering breezes. Sickening sounds, sirens shouting, bitter discussions like splitting atoms, like cutting lifelines, like turning off everything that soothes. Wait. Silence enters, discomfort eases. Do I hear a gentle rain, an agreement between humans, a declaration of war's end, news of climate improvement, truth resuming its throne? Wait. Reconsider dropping out. Human race turning over a new leaf, leaves trading oxygen and carbon dioxide, happy earth once again. I must be dreaming. Wait, do not wake me until the good becomes the real. Sides are sharp, are boundaries, keeping out friends who might help if there were recipes for understanding. Truth helps, screaming, not so much. Don't tell me who I am or where I come from. Don't edit my history. Do not reject my hurt. Understand my failure to understand. Try listening. I tell myself this too. And don't preach or insist or write banalities on social media. I might be scrolling and get hurt. Understand the reasons. And those sides, remember, there are always more than two. Tending the garden of soft melancholy. A child's fingers perfumed the green scent of grass, lingering lily of the valley. Life's gentlest moment, not enigmatic, not even noticed. Pearlescent sky embraces innocence. In this garden, flowers whisper, and the child hears without hearing, knows without knowing. This day, stored away for sadder times. She speaks to flower fairies, the world a gentle star, all honey and jam. Pain has not yet found her hands, calm upon her lap. In her hair, the sun. That was her kingdom. Faded eyes look back, wrinkled hands perfumed the scent of memories. The garden, rock, and weed, soft fairy tears upon her cheek. In the middle. In the middle of ironing, I pause, my poise aside, positioned to rescue me, the purse of dreams upended in a laundry room. Stealing a moment to confess, sins of omission hang heavy. Hangers draped with ironed shirts seem to scoff at my time out, but the iron understands. She is my best friend. Hears my confession and my song, never presses me to be anything but what I am, never tries to tailor me to her need. I feed her water, turn her on. She wants nothing more. I press her close to my wrinkles, love her for removing them, steaming up the room with passion. I pause in the middle of writing, reflect on all I've left undone, return to ironing, beloved for its finite nature, something I can count upon. The title of this poem is Comatose, but it is spelled comma, C-O-M-M-A hyphen toast. And it opens with two lines, two sentences. I've been thinking of giving up God. I've been thinking of giving up God. Grammar doesn't matter in the eternal skies. Statements made from joy or grief rise to the occasion and are heard. You can be at the edge or the beginning. Ends are not accepted wherever there is. A voice may whisper or boom. Giving up is a temporary place. Think about our lifelong friendship. Get back to me in the morning. Sleeping on the problem, a rocky road. Mornings come if you're blessed. If I wake, I'll know. So this next poem found a home in an anthology called Whispers and Shouts, which was edited by Gail Goldstein and Judy Turek years ago, and it was really for women. This is called Quarry. Quarry takes a time out. She dons a robe, lights up a smoke. Posing spends down precious time. Floors at home wait for waxing, ironing piles up. At sunset, he hands her, a bell sounds, signals back to work. Its gentle ring moves through her blood. The sculptor excuses color, welcomes sunlight. At sunset, he hands her a towel and a 20. She grabs her pack of smokes, catches the bus, restarts her heartbeat, casts off stony costumes, plans to drown the night in laundry. Mona Lisa probably cleaned toilets too. Thank you. Rising hope. It is morning, sky bright with sun. This morning, new to me, its arrival, like every morning, especially now, a surprise. I've been taking sorrow for granted too long. Perhaps the sun's position in the blue sky, its new distance, summer having its way. This union, an announcement, a reminder, and I remember possibilities. Perhaps there will be a saving, a change of heart, a return to joy. This one is for my husband, who is sitting here, whether he likes it or not. And they lived. I didn't consider that a happy ending. Left in the dark, the tears surprising my cheeks, and you shaking your head, walking out whistling that happy tune. The dark theater dressed me in comfort for a while, but theaters close and lights come up disclosing cowards and fools in the sparse audience. A gentle shoulder was all I needed. You offered popcorn and company, enough for our old intimacy beginning to wear. The seams just a bit frayed, still comfortable. Sometimes the warmest cloaks are not the perfect fit, but closets hold our secrets. My coat next to yours. No one is telling tales. Our door closes and we sit shoulder to shoulder, cups of coffee and memories. You say black, I think white. We laugh at the gray together. I seek happy endings in the theater. You work at them at home. And I'm going to close with this one. This is called For You, Summer. The wind at bay. Have I stopped breathing in this hallowed moment? Grateful for hiatus, for absence. Around my head, clouds promise to protect. Make a note of thanks, here's sustenance. Wind through maples, I hear my heart, the summer's beat, the silence and the peace. This fragile moment I will later crave when life resumes. But now, this. Thank you.
D.D. Spungin. All right. So we're going to move it right along, but I want to remind you of next week's readers. And I will tell you that Angela and I will not be here next week because it's our 45th wedding anniversary. So Angela's going up to Portland. I'm going down to Philadelphia. Next week, we have Linda Dickman, Marcia Nelson, Jack Zappos, and Sheila Hoffenberg. So good lineup again. All right, without any further ado, a great friend of the Gazebo. He's been here, I guess, just about every year. I can't imagine that you missed any. Former Suffolk County Poet Laureate, our good friend, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Savino.
Yep, that's good. Everybody here, clear. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kiwanis. Thank you to the team in the back with the raffles and the snacks. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to start with some old poems because I just feel that I hope they just don't slip away. First one is from Fireballs of Illuminated Scarecrow. These books are in the back there. And it's while I was still working, leaving early for work in the morning, changing lanes. In the morning when I leave, the rooster not yet awake, the landscape has no significance. I drive the LIE, mesmerized, following bloodshot eyes with 5 a.m. commuters. On occasion, a blinking signal distracts the dawn days, but more often, type A sidewinders pass me by one, carburetor mouth wide open, exhausting a half ton of stress. I ignore those bird flipping horn honking road rages, prefer Nakai's resounding flute. At least until embossed plates move so close into view they could be my epitaph. In that brief moment, I quickly change lanes, wear someone else's face, muffled fumes going straight to my head. And from inside a turtle shell, I'll make one precursor, and I know Brenardo will know this, but the patron saint of sailors is St. Elmo. Sea scars. The Great South Bay breaks on a rock garden shoreline, and I dream how it would be to return to the sea, but not as an apprentice seaman on a destroyer, but a captain on a cruiser guided by clouds that old shipmates now steer. Blue-clawed fingertips of sunken gray hands morph into magnets of radar. Each boy, a familiar face, never a simple story to forget. I head out those mornings at 0500 hours saluting passing ships. Fresh young mates clamor at the old salts, seaworthy howls. Yet after a few hours, I anchor and rock in the wake of drowned dreams and the echoing chill of St. Elmo's band playing anchors away out of key. And then because I struggled to do my next collection, I snuck in this little pocketbook of nature poems, titled I'm Not the Only One Here. Backyard rocker. An empty hardwood chair rocks back and forth in the backyard. Father's favorite chair. Next to the fig tree, his father's greatest joy as he rocked beneath the grapevine. It's here that timelines intersect in moments of life, in moments of afterlife. One might imagine clouds as spirits, stars in the Milky Way as watchers, an unimaginable endless stage. I rest in an Adirondack chair reading old books away from this new age anxiety. I yearn for the wisdom of the elders, to hear their guiding voices, losing myself in the landscape. Nowhere to turn but the backyard barrens, nothing to be heard but creaking wood. So I think for the 17 out of the 18 years I've been here, I've always had a sports poem, so I'm not going to leave it out this year. This is a short one, and it's remembering the New York center fielders in the glory days. In the belly of the outfield, there's a Buddha on the bookshelf with a baseball in its belly, autographed by Joe DiMaggio. There's an outfield with traveling fielders shagging greenbacks, forgotten after a few Septembers. There are innings in October where winds never stop swirling over deep spiked sod impressions of Mickey, Willie, and the Duke. Okay, now a few new ones. Dark web. I was there when the moon was closest to the sun, in a moment of lunacy, when nothing had taken shape or meaning, not even when the fog lifted. I was there in a thicket of trees, paths cut out between them, shallow creeks around them, low moving creatures, breaching shadows. I was there even in the darkest night when raindrops hit the water like chimes, warding off evil spirits, searching for light to turn bright. It's there that I waited for you to help. Help me understand where I am. Help me to escape this blue screen existence, lest I am left in the dark when my password expires. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Transition. We would meet every year on the same date in the same location. You haven't returned since the pandemic, as I have, hopeful. Yet there's a haunting aura about the avenue amidst August vertical rays of sunlight that has me question your presence. Perhaps the shadow of common man walking does not preclude the presence of spirits in between. And as time separates existence, I wonder if the shadow has a soul. I wonder if the spirit follows in a path of vanishing footsteps. I imagine there'll come a day when I will be pushed along the clouds and guided by stars. I imagine there'll come a day when common man will feel my breath in the wind, or my presence like a broom swept across the floor. Perhaps we will meet again somewhere in a space of time between what was and what comes next, somewhere science can't explain. So I'm going to close with this one. Craving to be cool. On any Sunday morning, the sun would pass through stained glass windows across pages of the Holy Book. And a priest would bellow, "In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti." Then turning the page, he would say, "Dominus vobiscum." And I would reply, "Ecum spiritu tuo." I was young, seasoned in religion, and sprinkled with blessed water, covering my neatly pressed cassock and surplice. Then at the onset of my teen years, I stole a couple of camels from an open pack on Uncle John's cabin cruiser. It was the cool thing to do. On the day I served my last mass, I took a shortcut along the creek between Elmont High School and B'nai B'rith Temple, inhaled unfiltered smoke deep into my lungs, coughing, choking, swearing to quit. But it was a cool thing to do. No one could have predicted what would happen next. I traded my missile for a switchblade, no longer speaking Latin. I was no longer in the playground hanging from the monkey bars like a copycat chimpanzee. I was cool, doing my thing. Until I began walking against gusts of wind in opposite directions, gasping to breathe, fallen leaves covering tracks left behind, brushing past thorns of rose bushes, thinking, did I ever know what it meant to be cool? A blackbird perched atop a utility wire, cracked its beak, wishing it could speak to claim, cool is what I say it is. Nothing more, nothing more. And I say, that's not cool to me. Thank you.
Robert Savino. Okay, next up is Oceanside's own Ken Kunken. Wherever you need to be. We got plenty of room. Did you want to?
Yeah.
No. No. I'm okay. Okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Kunken, and this is my wife, Anna. Hi. And for those of you that are familiar with the schools in Oceanside, you'll know that they're schools number 2 through 9. Well, there actually was a school number 1. School number 1 was located right here on the village green. I went to school number 1. I started in kindergarten here in 1955 and was here through 6th grade. This is the location where I learned how to read and write. So it's especially meaningful to me to be able to thank my teachers and let them know that I listened to what they had to say. And I'm proud to be able to read to you part of my book, which is a book about my life. And the book is called I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunken story. So I'd like to start by reading to you the introduction. In 1970, I was a fairly typical 20-year-old college student at Cornell University. I worked hard in school and loved sports. I was a member of a fraternity and had a lot of good friends. And like many 20-year-olds, I dreamed of leading a useful, productive, rewarding, and happy life. On the night of October 30th, 1970, a few of my football teammates and I decided to spend the evening at my friend Bob's cabin on the other side of Lake Cayuga in upstate New York. We all went together to the local IGA in College Town to shop for steak, corn, and pie. When we returned to the cabin, the question that should have been asked before we bought all the food was finally verbalized. Who knows how to cook? Since I was the only one who seemed to have any experience, I volunteered. I put the steaks into the oven and turned the knob to broil. I checked on the meat 5 or 6 minutes later, but the oven wasn't even warm. I called in Bob and said, "There's something wrong with the oven. It isn't heating up." Bob asked me if I had lit the pilot light. "What's a pilot light?" I replied. Bob started laughing at me. "Are you sure you know how to cook if you don't even know what a pilot light is?" I had never cooked on a gas stove before. I learned fast when Bob lit a match. The gas that had been building up inside of the stove exploded. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light coupled with a thunderous boom. I instinctively looked down to see if I was hurt, but there was not a mark on me. Incredibly, I was not injured. I was not burned. I was not even singed. And I remember lying in bed that night thinking how lucky I was. I remember thinking, if I can survive an explosion like that without being injured, I can survive anything. Nothing can happen to me. I must be invincible. The next day, I broke my neck. All my hopes and dreams were suddenly shattered. My very survival was now in question, and I was only 20. So now I'm going to read to you the beginning of chapter 1. It's titled Growing Up. Just move it over. I entered this world shortly before my mother left it. I was born on July 15th, 1950. 27 days later, my mother Judy died. She was 24 years old. We lived on Long Island in the village of Levittown, New York. The country was in the grips of a virulent polio epidemic. There were so many cases in our community that a mobile medical unit was going house to house to test possible victims. My brother Steve was showing symptoms, was tested, and diagnosed with polio. Fortunately, his was a mild case with symptoms confined to his right leg. However, while the medical team was in our house examining my brother, my mother became weak, was tested, and polio was confirmed. My mother and brother were hospitalized in adjoining first-floor rooms in Meadowbrook Hospital in East Meadow. My father and my maternal grandparents stayed at the hospital around the clock. When my family was not allowed in their hospital rooms, they would move from window to window, watching the two of them from outside the building. Steve was discharged after 3 days. Unfortunately, my mother's condition deteriorated, and within days, she was breathing only with the aid of an iron lung. My grandmother refused to leave my mother's side. Years later, I remember my grandmother telling me that at one point, she observed a nurse adjusting the controls on the iron lung, after which my mother seemed to be in distress. My grandmother immediately reported this to hospital personnel, who indeed confirmed that the controls were not set properly. After staying at the hospital around the clock for 4 days, my grandmother reluctantly agreed to go home for the night to get some sleep. It was that night that my mother died. For the rest of my grandmother's life, she was racked with guilt that she had not remained at the hospital that night to watch over her oldest daughter. Judith May Kunken was buried on August 11th, 1950, the same day that she died, wearing the gown in which she was married just 3 years before. In all, 10 people on our block on Morning Glory Road were diagnosed with the disease. My mother was the only fatality. Okay. As I indicated in my biography, I used to work at the Nassau County District Attorney's Office. So I thought I'd read you part of an excerpt that I wrote shortly after I had convicted a defendant of a serious felony. And this is an excerpt of what I wrote. Judge Dellin then asked me how I was going to feel if during the time before the defendant had a return for sentence, the defendant sought revenge on the victim and killed him. For the next 6 weeks, I lived in fear of that happening. I also started to worry every time I went outside that I would run into the defendant. I would be such an easy target if a defendant ever encountered me outside the courthouse. I had always been concerned about that. Obviously, my physical condition made me stand out. Once, not long after I was promoted to county court, an individual approached me on the street by the courthouse. He stood before me and said, "Remember me?" Those are the words most ADAs do not normally want to hear when they're away from the courthouse. My mind was racing, but I could not place him. He then said, "You're the DA, right?" I knew I couldn't say no because I was the only trial assistant district attorney in the county in a wheelchair. He then said, "My name is such and such. You had me for 2 DWIs, driving while intoxicated, in district court. I just wanted you to know that that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I entered into a program, got the help I needed, and am now doing well. I wanted to thank you." He then walked away. That was quite a relief. Interestingly, a few years after convicting a defendant for possession of an unloaded handgun, on my way down to the courtroom for the defendant's sentence, the defendant suddenly got in the elevator with me. I was alone at the time. The defendant said that he had a proposition for me. If I didn't ask the judge to send him to jail, the defendant would agree to work as my attendant for a year. Apparently, the defendant thought working as my attendant for a year would be punishment equivalent to going to jail for 2 to 4 years. I wonder how many of my attendants felt the same way. I politely declined the defendant's offer. A few minutes later, he was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in an upstate prison. Sure. All right, I'm just going to read an excerpt further in my book concerning when Anna and I were engaged. In January 2003, Anna and I traveled to Florida to attend my friend Dave Caldy's wedding. We visited with my father in Orlando and spent some time in Key West. While in Orlando, my father showed me my mother Judy's wedding ring. It was a beautiful platinum ring with a rectangular design on the outside and the inscription inside, LYK to JMG, June 29th, 1947. LYK were my father's initials, Leonard Yale Kunken, and JMG were my mother's, Judith May Goldblatt. My father suggested I give my mother's wedding ring to Anna as her wedding ring. I was very moved by his gesture. I was surprised that my father had kept that ring for more than 50 years. I had never seen it before. I hadn't known that he still had it. Only now did he decide to part with it. Anna felt especially honored to be able to wear my mother's ring. We later had a jeweler squeeze in the additional inscriptions, KJK to AB, June 14, 2003, inside the band. Staying in Key West with Anna was like an early honeymoon. One evening, it became particularly chilly, at least for me. So I wore my down vest, 2 neck warmers, a winter hat, and mittens. I was without a doubt the only person in the Keys dressed that way. Anna and I dined outside at a nice casual restaurant. I must have looked very strange and out of place, all bundled up, surrounded by tropical flowers. Anna sat beside me, feeding me a delicious seafood dinner. A man sitting at a neighboring table watched us the entire time. We tried not to pay much attention to him. When he finished his meal and paid his check, he came over to us, smiled, and said, "This must be what unconditional love looks like." I guess it was hard for anyone to comprehend how a beautiful woman such as Anna could love somebody in my condition. He could tell by the way Anna fed me and by the way we looked at each other. Only unconditional love could account for it. Our second Florida trip together was very different than our first one 3 years earlier had been. The biggest difference was the change in our relationship. There was absolutely no tension. Anna trusted me, and I trusted her. There was a certain magic, a certain chemistry between us. It seemed like a match made in heaven. The man who made the comment in Key West saw that as well. Okay. All right. Okay. Just a brief note. When Anna and I decided to get married, Anna said that she'd like to have my baby. Now, at the time, this seemed impossible. I had been paralyzed for more than 50 years, and I was already in my 50s. But there's a saying in the military that I've always liked. If difficult, we do it once. Impossible takes a little longer. Well, Anna and I were determined to make the impossible happen. And we wanted to do it sooner rather than later. So we looked into various options, including in vitro fertilization. And we're very excited to learn it still may be possible for someone in my condition to father a child. So we went through in vitro, and through the miracle of science, Anna became pregnant. So I'm going to read to you now a short excerpt about the first sonogram that we saw Anna was pregnant. On July 9th, Anna was scheduled to have her first sonogram since we had learned she was pregnant. This would be the first time I would see a sonogram performed, and it would tell us if we were hopefully pregnant with twins. I stayed close to Anna, but directed my attention to the monitor. Almost as soon as Dr. Goldschlag began, he said, "Here is a sac." Apparently a sac meant a baby. It was very strange to be looking at something so small and thinking that this would be my child. Within seconds, the doctor said, "Here is another sac." Jackpot, I thought. Twins. Almost immediately, the doctor said very matter of factly, "Here is another sac." Oh my God, triplets. As I was about to congratulate Anna, I saw the doctor was still moving the device around. It suddenly became clear to me that he was looking for more sacks. My mind immediately started racing back to the day of the implantation. Dr. Goldschlag had warned us then that the embryos might split and we could conceivably end up with 6. I wanted to tell him to stop. 3 was plenty. I was relieved when he finally did. It was definite. We were pregnant with triplets. Our life would never be the same. Anna and I looked at each other incredulously. Was this really happening? I hesitantly asked Anna how she felt about it. Great, she replied. I was sorry I had agreed to go to work immediately after the visit, instead of spending the rest of the day with Anna. While we were in the van, we called Steve, my father, Aunt Lorraine, and Aunt Betty. Every one of our conversations went something like this. We just finished the sonogram. We're having more than one. They each excitedly said, twins? Keep going, I replied. There was dead silence, followed by, what do you mean? Triplets, I exclaimed. Everyone was speechless. My father immediately started raising concerns and questions about the pregnancy and how we were going to manage. I was not surprised, although I had been hoping for a more positive reaction. Quite frankly, I hadn't the faintest idea how we were going to manage. I couldn't picture what it would be like to have triplets. I had never even seen triplets before. Okay. I just want to let you know, I was also pregnant in the delivery room.
Pregnant?
Well, I know I was also present. Present. I felt pregnant. I had sympathy pains and cramps the whole time. But how many husbands can say they were in the delivery room when their wife gave birth to triplets? So I wrote about that in the book. That's not the excerpt that I'll read to you next, but I'll just read to you a very short excerpt. All 3 of my boys are very healthy. They're about to start their sophomore year in college. But when they were born, as triplets always are, they're born prematurely. All my boys are fine. And initially, they spent 3 to 4 weeks in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. So I'll just read you a short excerpt about visiting my boys in the NICU. Timmy now seemed to have his eyes open every time I was in his room, as if he had been waiting for me, so I tended to spend more time beside his incubator. There was a big difference between just watching a sleeping baby versus watching a baby who was looking straight at me intently. The nurses said that Timmy would benefit from close contact with his parents. Cuddling with daddy therapy was recommended. During one of my evening visits, Anna unbuttoned my shirt, pulled up my t-shirt, and put a diapered but otherwise naked Timmy against my chest. He snuggled there for a while, with Anna holding Timmy close to my skin. It was incredible to feel his small hands touching me. It was wonderfully strange to feel him moving against me. One day, a NICU nurse who didn't know me very well thought it would be great if I held Timmy by myself. I was apprehensive, but figured the nurse knew what he was doing. He assured me he would remain close by. He then put Timmy, bundled in a blanket, in the crook of my left arm. Timmy was very small, but still weighed more than 3 pounds. My left arm had gotten stronger over the years, but supporting Timmy's weight for more than a few seconds was a huge effort for me. I didn't even have my lap board on to rest my arm on. As soon as the nurse put Timmy in my left arm, I knew it had not been a good idea. I was scared to death that my arm would fatigue and I would drop him. Within a few seconds, I told the nurse to take Timmy away. I didn't want the nurse to think I didn't want to hold my son. I would have given anything to be able to do that for hours, but I knew my limitations. I recognized that my role as a father would be limited physically. I would never be able to pick the boys up when they cried, or change their diapers, or give them a bottle. I would have to find different ways to be helpful. My role was to be exclusively that of provider, and I worried I wouldn't even be able to do that adequately. As soon as we had found out we were expecting triplets, I couldn't stop thinking about the expenses it would involve. During many long sleepless nights, I tried to come up with different ways to pay for the help Anna would need. I thought about every possible way to use my financial resources to the best advantage. No matter which way I approached the problem, though, I still seemed to fall short. Anna pointed out that my role of provider was very similar to the role my father had assumed after my accident. He never really provided me with any physical help. Instead, he focused on making sure money was there to pay for the help I needed. I desperately wanted to care for my sons, but I obviously could not do so physically. I started to better appreciate my father's concerns about finances. I also started to realize how awful my father must have felt back in 1970 when he received that first phone call about my injury. My 3 sons were only a few weeks old, but already I could not imagine my life without them. I didn't like even the thought that they may be in any pain or discomfort. We brought Timmy home on Saturday, February 19th, and Joey the next morning. Betty had to return to New Jersey the day Joey arrived at our condo. Fortunately, Anna arranged to have Sue, a baby nurse, stay with us for the next 9 days. How are we going to survive after that? So, thank you. I'll just say one quick thing about the title of my book. While I was still a patient in the hospital, I had the opportunity to testify before a United States Senate Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother, Robert Kennedy, liked very much. And the inscription was a quotation originally attributed to George Bernard Shaw. And the words on that inscription have always been very meaningful to me. The inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not?" That's where the title of my book comes. Thank you.
Ken Kunken. Copies of his book, and Brenardo has books in the back as well. So I urge you, before you leave, to see the ladies in the back. All right. So we're going to draw the 50, 25, 25. But before I do that, let's hear it for all 4 of our readers here tonight. Great job. Okay. So the winner of $32 tonight is Marianne Lara. Hey. All right. Now, for those of you who haven't been here before or just recent, make sure if you're not getting our email, see them in the back. What I'm going to do now is read 4 names. You win nothing tonight, but you get put into the grand prize drawing. Pick us. A couple of weeks. Peter Dugan. Hey. Sheila. And Barbara Novak. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you to our 4 readers. Thank you, Bernardo, for traveling all this distance. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you again here next week. Thank you.